Hi, and welcome to today's reading. Today we are all about being fancy. You're going to see that our main character in today's reading prefers a life of fancy and glitz and glam. Now, today's story is called The Necklace, and although I don't have a very glitzy necklace on, I do have my tiara today. So, we are dressing the part for today, being real fancy as we read today's story. So let's go ahead and get started. As I said, today's story is entitled The Necklace by Guy de Maupassant. Alright, we are going to just be reading the first half of today's story today. Okay? So, let's go ahead and get started. She was one of those pretty and charming young girls who sometimes are born, as if by a mistake of destiny, into a family of clerks. She had no dowry, or money given by the bride's family, no expectations, no way of being known, understood, loved, married by any rich and distinguished man, and so she let herself be married to a little clerk of the Ministry of Education. She dressed plainly because she could not dress well, but she was as unhappy as if she had really fallen from her proper place in life. Since with women there is neither caste nor rank, because beauty, grace, and charm take the place of family and birth. Natural ingenuity, instinct for what is elegant, and a supple mind are their sole hierarchy, and make of women of the people the equals of the very greatest ladies. Mathilde suffered ceaselessly, feeling herself born to enjoy all delicacies and all luxuries. She was distressed at the poverty of her dwelling, at the bareness of the walls, at the shabby chairs, the ugliness of the curtains. All these things, which another woman of her rank would never even have noticed, tortured her and made her angry. The sight of the little Breton peasant who did her humble housework aroused her in her despairing regrets and bewildering dreams. She thought of silent antechambers, hung with oriental tapestry, illuminated by tall lamps of bronze, with two tall footmen in knee breeches asleep in the armchairs, made drowsy by the oppressive heat of the stove. She thought of long reception halls hung with ancient silk, of the dainty cabinets containing priceless curiosities, and of the little coquettish perfumed reception rooms made for chatting at 5 o'clock with intimate friends, with men famous and sought after, whom all women envy, and whose attention they all desire. When she sat down to dinner before the round table, covered with a tablecloth used for 3 days opposite her husband, who uncovered the soup tureen and declared with a delighted air, "Ah, the good soup! I don't know anything better than that." She thought of dainty dinners, of shining silverware, of tapestry that peopled the walls with ancient personages, and with strange birds flying in the midst of a fairy forest. And she thought of delicious dinners served on marvelous plates, and of the whispered gallantries to which you listen with a sphinx-like smile, while you are eating the pink meat of a trout or the wings of a quail. But she had no gowns, no jewels, nothing. And she loved nothing but that. She felt made for that. She would have liked so much to please, to be envied, to be charming, to be sought after. She had a friend, a former schoolmate at the convent, who was rich, and whom she did not like to go to see any more, because she felt so sad when she came home. But one evening her husband came home with a triumphant air, and holding a large envelope in his hand, said, "There is something for you." She tore the paper quickly and drew out a printed card which bore these words: the Minister of Education, and Madame Georges Ramponneau request the honor of Madame Lucille's company at the Palace of the Ministry on Monday evening, January 18th. Instead of being delighted, as her husband had hoped, she threw the invitation at the table crossly, muttering, "What do you want me to do with that?" "But, my dear, I thought you would be pleased. You never go out, and this is such a fine opportunity. I had great trouble to get it. Everyone wants to go. It is very select, and they are not getting many invitations to clerks. The whole official world will be there." She looked at him with an irritated glance, and said impatiently, "And what do you wish me to put on my back?" She had not thought of that. He had not thought of that. He stammered, "Why, the gown you go to the theatre in. It looks very well to me." He stopped, distracted, seeing that his wife was weeping. Two great tears ran slowly from the corners of her eyes toward the corners of her mouth. "What's the matter? What's the matter?" he stuttered. By a violent effort she conquered her grief and replied in a calm voice, while she wiped her wet tears, "Nothing. Only I have no gown, and therefore I cannot go to this ball. Give your card to some colleague whose wife is better equipped than I am." He was in despair. He resumed, "See here, Mathilde, how much would it cost? A suitable gown, which you could use on other occasions. Something very simple." She reflected several seconds, making her calculation, and wondering also what sum she could ask without drawing on herself an immediate refusal and a frightened exclamation from the economical clerk. Finally she replied with hesitation, "I don't know exactly, but I think I could manage it with 400 francs. He grew a little pale, because he was setting aside just that amount to buy a gun and treat himself to a little shooting next summer on the plain of Nanterre, with several friends who went to shoot larks there on Sundays. But he said, "Very well, I will give you 400 francs, and try to have a pretty gown." The day of the ball drew near, and Madame Lucille seemed sad, restless, anxious. Her gown was ready, however. Her husband said to her one evening, "What is the matter? Come, you have seemed very odd these last 3 days." She answered, "It annoys me not to have a single piece of jewelry, not a single ornament, nothing to put on. I shall look poverty-stricken. I would almost rather not go at all." "You might wear natural flowers," said her husband. "They're very stylish at this time of the year. For 10 francs you can get 2 or 3 magnificent roses." She was not convinced. "No, there's nothing more humiliating than to look poor among other women who are rich." "How silly you are!" her husband cried. "Go look up your friend Madame Forestier, and ask her to lend you some jewels. You know her quite well enough to do that." She gave a cry of joy. "True! I never thought of that." The next day she went to her friend, and told her of her distress. Madame Forestier went to a wardrobe with a mirror, took out a large jewel box, brought it back, opened it, and said to Madame Lucille, "Choose, my dear." She saw first some bracelets, then a pearl necklace, then a Venetian gold cross set with precious stones of admirable workmanship. She tried on the ornaments before the mirror, hesitated, and could not make up her mind to part with them, to give them back. She kept asking, "Haven't you any more?" "Why, yes, look further. I don't know what you like." Suddenly she discovered, in a black satin box, a superb diamond necklace, and her heart throbbed with an immoderate desire. Her hands trembled as she took it. She fastened it round her throat, outside her high-necked waist, and was lost in ecstasy at her reflection in the mirror. Then she asked, hesitating, filled with anxious doubt, "Will you lend me this, only this?" Why, yes, certainly. She threw her arms around her friend's neck, kissed her with great emotion, then fled with her treasure. The night of the ball arrived. Madame Lucille was a great success. She was prettier than any other woman there, elegant, graceful, smiling, and wild with joy. All the men looked at her, asked her name, sought to be introduced. All the officials of the cabinet wished to waltz with her. She was noticed by the minister himself. She danced with rapture, with passion, intoxicated by pleasure, forgetting all in the triumph of her beauty, in the glory of her success, in a sort of cloud of happiness made up of all this admiration, of all these awakened desires, and of this victory so complete and so sweet to a woman's heart. She left the ball around 4 o'clock in the morning. Her husband had been sleeping since midnight in a little deserted anteroom, with 3 other gentlemen whose wives were enjoying the ball. He threw over her shoulders the wraps he had brought, the modest wraps of common life, the poverty of which contrasted with the elegance of the ball gown. She felt this, and wished to escape, so as not to be noticed by the other women who were enveloping themselves in costly furs. Lucille held her back, saying, "Wait a bit, you will catch cold outside. I will call a cab." But she did not listen to him, and rapidly descended the stairs. When they reached the street, they could not find a carriage, and began to look for one, shouting after the cabman passing at a distance. They went toward the Seine in despair, shivering with cold. At last they found on the quay one of those ancient night-cabs which, as though they were ashamed to show their shabbiness during the day, are never seen round Paris until after dark. It took them to their dwelling in the Rue des Martyrs, and sadly they mounted the stairs to their flat. All was ended for her. As to him, he reflected that he must be at the ministry at 10 o'clock that morning. She removed her wraps before the glass so as to see herself once more in all her glory. But suddenly she uttered a cry. She no longer had the necklace around her neck. "What is the matter with you?" demanded her husband, already half undressed. She turned distractedly toward him. I've lost Madame Forestier's necklace," she cried. He stood up, bewildered. "What? How? Impossible!" They looked among the folds of her skirt, of her cloak, in her pockets, everywhere, but did not find it. "Are you sure you had it when you left the ball?" he asked. "Yes, I felt it in the vestibule of the palace." "But if you had lost it in the street, we should have heard it fall. It must be in the cab." "Yes, probably. Did you take his number?" "No. And you? Didn't you notice it?" "No." They looked at each other thunderstruck. At last Lucille put on his clothes. "I shall go back on foot," said he, "over the whole route to see whether I can find it." He went out. She sat waiting on a chair in her ball dress, without strength to go to bed, overwhelmed, without any fire, without a thought. Her husband returned about 7 o'clock. He had found nothing. He went to the police headquarters, to the newspaper offices, to offer a reward. He went to the cab companies, everywhere. He was urged by the least spark of hope. She waited all day in the same condition of mad fear before this terrible calamity. Lucille returned at night with a hollow, pale face. He had discovered nothing. "You must write to a friend," said he, "that you have broken the clasp of her necklace and that you are having it mended. That will give us time to turn round." She wrote as he dictated. And this is where we will stop for today, and we will discuss